And Jamie, I've got about 1 more minute.
Yes, 1 more minute.
We'll be getting started in another minute. Thanks for being here. Okay, we're right at 12. Jamie, do we want to start or wait another minute?
We'll start. Yeah, we'll keep it to the time. Thanks.
Going. All right, thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to the Long-Term Care and Dementia Echo Pilot Project. Hello, my name is Holly Glover, and I will be the coordinator for today's Echo session. Please note we will be recording today's Echo session for educational purposes. Engagement and participation is expected, so please turn on your cameras if you can and mute your computers and phones to minimize distractions when you are talking. For those on the phone, *6 to mute and unmute. CE credits for nursing, social work, LPC, and administrators are provided for this event. A post-session email will be sent to you with details on how to obtain your CE credits. To help us record your attendance, I ask that you chat in your name, role, email, facility's name if applicable, and the same information for any additional members who are attending with you. We're going to start by doing a poll. You will see a poll question on your screen regarding what we discussed last week. I'll give you a minute to answer. If you weren't here last week, you can just close the poll. So let me launch that poll. If you would please answer. And we're asking, did you make any changes in your community this past week that improved communication with your resident families? I'm going to leave that up just a couple more seconds and then we'll close the poll and get started. Thank you very much for your answers. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the meeting facilitator for today's session.
Thank you, Holly. And again, welcome everybody. I'm Jamie. I will be facilitating today's meeting, and I am with the James L. West Center, and I'm Vice President of Education here. We are going to do introductions again this week with a fun icebreaker question, but I want to quickly say, because it was brought up while we were waiting for everybody, when I send a reminder each week or the Tuesday mornings, I always include that link. And I include that for convenience. It's just easy to click on that. But if you don't want to have to answer all those questions each week, you should be able to download the meeting to your calendar. And if you go to your calendar and just click on the link in your calendar invite, that should take you automatically to the meeting so you don't have to answer those questions each week. It doesn't matter either way. I just wanted to let you all know that because I know there's a lot of questions there to fill out in that registration link. But like I said, we're going to do introductions, and then we will do the program, the content for today, which we have Dee and Tanya talking about life enrichment and resident engagement. So hot topic, important topic. And then we're going to do our case presentation, which Lydia Ford is actually going to be our case presenter today. as we go around and introduce ourselves, our icebreaker is going to be, I want you to introduce, say your name, the organization you're with, where you're calling in from, what county you're calling in from, but also the name of your high school and how many people were in your graduating class. So I'll start, Jamie, with the James L. West Center. I went to Richland High School and there was over 500 people in my class. A lot of people, but so Holly, I'll go back to you unless you answer, and then I'll go around my Zoom screen. So.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm Holly Glover. I'm the Director of Education here, and you might can tell from my accent, I grew up in Oklahoma. I was born in Texas, got back here as quick as I could, but I grew up in Eric, Oklahoma, graduating class with 22 people. And no, I wasn't the valedictorian. That's shame, isn't it? Okay.
Thank you, Holly. As long as you weren't 20, like number 22 in your class, right?
I was 21. No, I wasn't.
Thank you. Linda Abel, I got you next.
Hi, I'm Linda Abel. I'm with Dementia Friendly Fort Worth here in Tarrant County. And I graduated from high school in Houston, Spring Woods High School. I actually went to 2 high schools, but graduated from Spring Woods. And honestly, I don't have a clue. It was a new school. It was the second year. And I'm guessing there were maybe 1,000 kids in the class. I mean, it was a big school, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I just don't remember that. I blocked high school out really well.
Thank you, Linda. Dee, how about you?
Hi, my name is Dee Moland. I'm here at the James L. West Center. I went to OD Wyatt, and I believe it was in between 200 and 250 people. I graduated a year before I was supposed to, so I didn't graduate with my class.
Wow, very cool. All right, Tanya, what about you?
Hi, I'm Tanya, and I'm one of the Life Enrichment Directors here at the James L. West Center. Oh, I graduated from ODY in '98, and that's been too long for me to remember how many people graduated with me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, thanks, Tanya. And Natalie Oliver, I have you next.
Good morning. I am from Waco, Texas, and I graduated from Riker Catholic High School. We had nuns. They were scary. And I think there were about 36 people that graduated with me. And my best friend, not the valedictorian, what's the second one called?
Salutatorian?
Yeah, the second smartest one. She got, when they were doing awards, they announced her name, and I went, "You're smart too." I had no idea, clueless. So, but anyway, yeah, very small class, but I'm glad to be here. So thank y'all for having me.
Yes, thanks, Natalie. And this is your first week joining us, correct?
Yes, I just put a little bit about me in the chat, and basically I want to learn from this, and my heart is with dementia care. And so when I learned, I had a client that told me about the James L. West and said, "You've got to get connected. They are a wonderful support," and all of that. And so I latched on. So here I am. Thank you.
Glad you're here. Thank you, Natalie. And Kathy, I have you next. Kathy Shockley.
Hi, I'm Kathy Shockley with the Dallas and Northeast Texas chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I graduated high school in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was a mighty fighting W.B. Ray High School Texan, and I believe we had about 450 people in our graduating class.
Thank you, Kathy. And Lydia.
Hi, my name is Lydia Ford. I graduated from the Texas Academy of Leadership in the Humanities at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. And I graduated with 17 people.
Wow.
Very small.
Very small.
Lydia, our younger son, Chris, also went to the academy at Lamar.
What year did he graduate?
Oh my goodness. I'll have to tell you how old he is because I don't remember, but he just turned 40 in December. And so I don't know, whatever that was.
That's incredible. I've never met another alum or heard of anyone else that's even heard of it. So, that's wonderful.
It's a small world, right?
Yes, indeed.
Lakeisha. Oh, you're on mute, Lakeisha.
My name's Keisha. I'm the DON at James L. West, and I am from Wichita, Kansas. I graduated from Wichita South High, graduating class of approximately 350.
Thanks, Keisha. And Michelle Key.
Are we saying what year we graduated to?
If you want to.
Oh, okay. Well,
and
my name is
how many
Michelle Key. I am a family nurse practitioner in Nacogdoches. I am currently in the psych mental health program at UT Tyler. I graduated in 2001 from Jersey Village in Houston, Texas, and there were about 800 of us, maybe. I was not valedictorian or salutatorian, by the way.
Thanks, Michelle. Teresa.
All right, so I graduated high school a very long time ago, several lifetimes ago. Newfield High School, Wolverines, those were our claws, and graduated a class of about 700.
Wow. And Sonia, I have you next.
Sonia Tiller. I am a family nurse practitioner at Christus Trinity Clinic in primary care, but I'm also a PMHMP postmaster's certification student. And I graduated from John Tyler High School here in Tyler, and we had like, I don't know, somewhere between 425 and 450 in our class. So I was in the top 20. That's all I know. But
And Jessica, Joseph, if you're available.
Yes, hi. My name is Jessica Joseph. I am a family nurse practitioner currently working at Vitas, doing hospice care in the home. I grew up in Garland, and then I moved to Rowlett when I was about 12, and I graduated from Rowlett High School in 2001. I mean, it was a really big high school, well over 500 or so people.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica. And Barb Hardy, I got you last. If you introduce yourself in your high school and how many people you graduated with.
Graduated from Loveland High School in Ohio. I think there's probably a couple hundred of us. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And I am a gerontological nurse practitioner at University of North Texas Health Science Center and see patients here at James L. West.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing, everybody. It's interesting to hear, we got 17 all the way up to, I think somebody said over 800 or close to 800. And we're all here together today. And then we had that connection with Linda and Lydia. And so that's fun. I will just quickly remind everybody that just be aware of not sharing any personal health information, either in our case presentation or if you do a case presentation, but just in sharing experiences as well. And that we also there are no regulatory organizations here. So this is a safe, non-judgmental place to be able to talk and learn from each other and the teach all, learn all model. So I'm going to turn it over to our program presenters today. We've got Dee Mullen and Tanya Stafford, and they are going to cover or talk about life enrichment and resident engagement. And we'll have time for questions at the end of their program. So Dee and Tanya, the floor is yours.
We can't hear you, Dee.
Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. Now I'm going to share my screen. All right, so today we're going to focus on life enrichment and resident engagement. A lot of our work here at James L. West consists of most of our teams working together to put together interventions for our dementia residents, and life enrichment plays a big role in that. Okay, so with life enrichment, our normal objectives are basically we're wanting to identify the best practices and program models that increase engagement. So you always want to identify those things that are important to that resident. Illustrate ways to increase engagement in large and small group activities. Some residents have a social preference. Some residents prefer smaller groups of 3 or 4, while other residents prefer groups of maybe 6 or 7. It just depends on the resident. And we also discover ways to decrease anxiety and increase well-being through one-on-one activities. So another way of putting interventions in place. So life enrichment is very important. Often activities are thought to be something that keeps the resident busy and pass time. However, this is not true. Meaningful and engaging activities can provide positive benefits. So for instance, if I have a resident who enjoyed gardening, maybe gardening was her way to relax, or maybe gardening was a way for her to de-stress or something like that. And that provides a positive benefit to her. So that will be a meaningful activity for her to engage in, whether it's one-on-one or a group setting. It allows the resident to thrive at their highest functional ability. So, I mean, us as people, I mean, you want to always function at your highest ability. And that comes hand in hand with, you know, us being happy, or us being positive, having positive attitudes, or having positive outlooks. Activities have been proven to increase quality of life, reduce depression, reduce sundowning, and reduce behaviors. So most of the time our sundowning occurs at a certain time of the day. And normally with life enrichment here at the West Center, we focus on that specific time of the day by providing certain activities to keep the residents engaged in activities. And that reduces sundowning and likely reduces behaviors. So the life enrichment, you're basically helping the resident find their purpose for every day. You know, with dementia, they seem to forget simple things, and we want them to remember those things. We want them to keep as much independence as possible. Also helping them understand that needing help is not so bad. So meaningful engagement is an important dimension of quality of life and care for persons living with dementia. A systematic review identifies best care practices to create and maintain meaningful engagement among persons with dementia. 4 approaches were identified that successfully promote meaningful engagement. Knowing the person. You know, you have to know your resident. You want to know what makes this person happy, what makes this person sad, what makes this person angry, what topics we should avoid, or things like that. Knowing things like that is a big plus sign when dealing with residents with dementia. Connecting with and meeting people where they are. So you want to keep that communication open. You want to keep that connection open, you know, with you and the resident, as well as with you and the family members. You know, a lot of our family members have a lot of information that are meaningful to us when providing activities or meaningful engagement. Being in the moment, our residents, they depend on us. You know, they depend on that partnership. They want us to advocate for them. Some of them are not able to verbalize what they need, and being there in the moment with that resident to advocate for that resident builds a trust bond. And of course, viewing all encounters as an opportunity. So regardless of who they're connecting with, or, you know, where they are connecting with this person, you know, you want to view all of those as opportunities to help the resident, to engage the resident. You know, even if it's something as simple as a flower that I pulled from the garden and I'm holding it in my hand, you know, I can start an activity with that flower. I can ask her, you know, do you have any special memories tied to this flower? Is this your favorite flower? You know, why did you pick this flower? What do you love this color? Different things to you view it as an opportunity to basically engage. Incorporating these approaches in care routines and adoption by all care partners can promote meaningful engagement. So you're probably wondering what activities can be provided. So most of the time when you hear about engagements or activities, you get the simple things such as card games or maybe board games or puzzles or different things like that. And it can also include life skills like cleaning, organizing, and self-care. Some residents prefer to still, organize and clean, just to have a meaningful activity or engagement. Knowing the resident's history is very vital. Here at the West Center, our person-centered approach is to ensure that we're providing activities that are meaningful. So one of the resources that we use here at the West Center is called a Life Story Legacy. The Life Story Legacy is a packet that gives us this information ranging from what high school they went to, did they have any high school sweethearts, what pets did they have, what makes them angry, what topics we should avoid, do they prefer to be called a certain name, different things like that. And it helps us by providing those individualized activities that are meaningful for that specific resident. Group activities are, they're still being promoted, but you don't want somebody in a bingo game that doesn't enjoy bingo. It's not meaningful for them. So therapeutic, purposeful, and meaningful activities are aimed to increase wellness. Therapeutic recreation has been shown to provide many benefits related to physical, social, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual areas of well-being. So here at the West Center, those 5 areas of wellness are something that we focus on here. That physical, social, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual areas of well-being are areas that, we all want to focus on as people, regardless of if we have dementia or if we're just a regular person on the street. Getting all of those areas of wellness met provides positive vibes for us. It gives us a sense that we're needed or a sense of well-being. And so, with those areas, especially with the physical, the social, and the emotional, again, you go back to that partnership, that being there in the moment. Those things, you have to provide emotional support every day. We're here with the resident, we're engaging, we're providing emotional support almost every minute of the day. The goal is to strive and ensure all of those areas are being addressed through the person-centered care approach. So each one of those areas of wellness is a subject that we focus on. Every activity that we provide supports either one or multiple areas of those activities. So for an example, with our music therapist, she can provide a physical, physical area of well-being by the residents playing with the instruments, they're shaking and rattling. So that's a range of motion for physical activity. It's a social activity as well. She's communicating with them. She's talking to them. She's holding a conversation with them, and they're socializing during this activity. It can also be intellectual. Our residents have a very superb way of remembering musical lyrics. And, that's an intellectual thing. It takes a lot for them to remember lyrics to a certain song. It can be emotional as well. She's providing emotional support for some of those residents who prefer one-on-one activities and who prefer to be alone versus being in larger group settings. So with our therapeutic recreation programs, they're designed to facilitate patients' areas of well-being by providing research and evidence-based activity opportunities. Structured activities are a part of a holistic program that has been designed to help each individual with their minds and bodies, to keep their minds and bodies active. Sorry, I'll keep going. An example of a therapeutic activity will be a 20-minute exercise session. So just exactly as I spoke on with that music therapy session, if a resident is attending music therapy and they're shaking, rattling, and rolling to the music and kind of moving their arms up and down, that's a 20-minute exercise session. It can reduce anxiety, stress, pain, and it can also increase their alertness. Researchers have also linked the release of endorphins during exercise and creative expression and social interactions to have positive benefits of well-being. So here at the West Center, we focus on a morning exercise session and an evening exercise session, or an active activity. So in the morning, normally our residents are provided with at least a 20 or 30-minute simple exercise session. And after the rest and relaxation portion of the day, we also pick back up with a more physical activity, such as maybe bowling or maybe axe throwing or different things like that, something physical that can keep them pumping and moving. Other examples of therapeutic programs are gardening, like I mentioned earlier. Maybe gardening is something to help, the resident relieve stress or different things like that. Cooking classes. You have a resident that, cooking was their passion, and that was something that they lived by. So teaching a cooking class would definitely be right up their alley. Storytelling, dance movement, art, and music, those different things are all examples of therapeutic programs. Our therapeutic recreation has many different multiple things that it addresses. It addresses hand and eye coordination, fine motor skills, gross motor movement, balance, endurance, strength, cardiovascular health, cognition, mood, self-esteem, social connections, and increased overall independence. So, and as I mentioned earlier, one activity can support multiple areas of wellness. So that's really important when providing those individualized activities. Group activities can support and promote multiple areas of wellness as well. This gives the resident the opportunity to thrive in social environments. So you do have a few residents that, maybe were a part of different committees or different charities, and, they enjoyed going out and socializing and things like that. Group activities can promote that area of wellness, can keep that resident social by making sure they attend most of our social activities. So an example of a larger small group activity would be a discussion about wartime. This promotes socialization by giving the resident a chance to not only tell their stories and share their experiences, but also hear the stories of those who fought and lived during the war. This often leads to a gateway for friendship and trust. So you have two veterans who are sitting and, telling their stories, and one has heard the other story, and, they kind of just have this passion for the war, and they all of a sudden spark a conversation, and there's a friendship. So a lot, like I said, a lot of those activities are going to support multiple areas of wellness. This activity can also promote positive and safe emotional expression. So a lot of our veterans, have gotten to the point where they hold in a lot of what they went through during the war times. And it's not easy for them to talk about those things, and we as people don't push those things to be talked about. But if you have a resident who is a veteran and they run into another veteran and they're sharing their emotional experiences with each other, that is emotional support. A resident is now providing emotional support for another resident. So they get a chance to express their emotions to each other as veterans without all the extra people around. This activity would also promote an intellectual area of wellness, because not only are they giving the information, but they're receiving the information as well. Many of our veterans were in different branches, different things were going on at different times. So it's very exciting to hear different stories from different parts of the country and different wars, and everybody's getting this information. So a lot of our activities or group activities they support multiple areas, as well as our one-on-one engagements and activities. These one-on-one engagements are used to respond to the residents that have specific social settings or want to avoid social settings overall. Some residents thrive in a larger social setting and some in small social settings. There are many people who prefer to have the one-on-one setting, and it's their choice. So one thing that we focus on here is a level of independence. And if a resident prefers a certain level of engagement, we try our best to provide that level of preferred engagement. In the stages of dementia, some of the residents may develop behaviors. These behaviors can cause the resident to be overstimulated during large group activities, and the resident may become frustrated. One-on-one activity would provide the resident with a more meaningful and purposeful activity to better suit his needs, wants, or abilities. So you may have a resident that just does not do well in larger group activities. So you provide one-on-one engagement. This will help secure his trust, because of course he's not really fond of being in a large group setting. Maybe it's too overstimulating for him, maybe it's too much noise, or maybe he just prefers just less people. So our one-on-one engagement and activities supports that level of preference, is what I would say. So when we facilitate and initiate our therapeutic recreation programs, we focus on person-centered programs that have proved to have a better engagement rate and greater quality of life for the resident. It's very vital to your community. Find and provide resources in your facility with the history information for your residents. So as I stated earlier, our Life Story Legacy packet, our Music and Memories packet, those are ways for us to be able to dig deeper into the residents' past and their history, and to find out that information we need to provide a meaningful stay or a meaningful activity. If you also want to ensure, like I said, those 5 areas of wellness, specifically physical, social, and intellectual, are maintained daily. And of course, emotional and spiritual is, Bible study or chapel services, in which we provide those weekly. All activities should be provided at the residence level of functioning. That is a huge part of providing activities. You don't want to place a higher functioning resident in a lower functioning activity, and vice versa. You would then limit that resident to what they can or can't do, and that's not what you want to do. You want to encourage the resident to do more. Finally, always remember that all of your activities are subject to change according to your facility and your residents. Every day is not the same. We do have planned activities here, but of course our activities are according to our residents. So if our residents prefer not to play bingo, then that is off the schedule and we are going to find something else to do. No day is the same. No activity is going to be the same. And of course, like I said, with the level of functioning and the activities that are subject to change, your resources are very vital in your community, and that will be your go-to for everything.
Thank you, Dee. That was great. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions or comments. I know Kathy wrote in the chat that she would like to see some pictures of axe throwing. And I wrote that down too. It's like axe throwing. That's so cool. Maybe if we could possibly provide some next week, depending on photo releases, see what that looks like, that would be great. But if there are any questions from the group, and there's also a question put in the chat that we were just curious about how your community regularly engages those persons living with dementia with meaningful activities as well. So I'm going to open it up for discussion or questions.
Dee, that was
Dee,
really
I'd love-
good presentation. Sorry. I was just gonna say that I appreciate you allowing them to kind of choose. I volunteer at the senior center at least twice a month, and sometimes bingo is a big hit, but sometimes they don't want to do bingo. They want to play checkers or just sit there and talk. So kind of adjusting your schedule to what the resident needs and wants is super encouraging, I think, just because sometimes we think, well, this is what's on the schedule and this is what we're going to do. So thank you for that.
No problem. And to answer the question from, the pictures of the axe throwing, I will get more pictures, and I will somehow, some way try to post them on James L. West's website. So you guys stay tuned.
Dee, I would love to see your activity calendar, especially for the house or houses in which you have your the residents who require the heaviest care. I think sometimes that can really be a challenge for staff to just really have things that are engaging and meaningful for individuals who are maybe further along in their dementia.
Yes, and like I said, you always have to remember that the activities are subject to change. So with our calendars, we provide those regular calendar activities, but we also ensure that, you know, our residents are being provided with those individualized activities. So even if we are not providing them as a group, providing them with as an individual is also an option, regardless of, you know, your calendars or your planned activities.
And we can, in the follow-up email this afternoon, we can include a couple of activity calendars. So you guys have, just to see what that looks like for the different levels of or different stages of the disease. And also, do you mention the life story legacy? Would there be a template that we could share with the group also? Did you mention?
Yes, give me a second and let me find it.
Yeah, and we can include it in the follow-up, but just so that's another resource on how we get their information.
And I was going to mention also, Kathy, something that's interesting is, so we're divided into houses. We're divided into 5 houses as they kind of progress through. And of course, that's a very, very hard call whenever we call the families and say that it is time to go to Trinity House, which is our last house. It's our most, you know, the latest stage. But one of the things that we do, Teresa, Keisha, our nursing, and is take the families to that house that we're getting ready to go to and let them see. And the last 2 that I've taken up, both of them said, there's so much life going on here. This isn't end of life. There is life going on here. It's quality of life, because their thought was, oh no, Trinity, the last house. What does this mean? And they get up there and go, oh my God, there's life happening here. I said, that to me is no better. What a compliment. There's life happening here. So yeah, when they send you those calendars, it's where it may be the same thing going on in our mild stage as our late stage, but they're accommodating the disease, doing it in a different way. So it's interesting to see.
And then, you know, on Trinity, we have the Namaste program up there, and that is not on our calendar. So maybe we can also send her the papers about Namaste so she can see what Namaste is and how we serve the residents on Trinity.
Yeah, that would be great. Can you give just a short description on what that is, Tony?
The Namaste is a room, and it has 4 recliners, maybe 5, depending on the social distancing. And we do a lot of sensory stimulation and stuff for them to feel, smell. We have the lights down, and we have a lot of different projectors. So sometimes the walls may have stars on them, and another day they may have something else. And we have these tubes that are like fish tanks. And so they can look at the fishes. They're not real fishes, but they look like fish tanks. And then somebody's in there with them, a life enrichment assistant, and she's a compassionate touch. I don't know if they know what compassionate touch is, but I'm sure we can send the papers for compassionate touch as well. That's what we do on our 4th floor. It's a lot of the sight, smell, taste, touch.
Thank you. Sensory interaction, right? Sensory stimulation.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll make sure and include that in the follow-up email as well. Thank you so much, Dee and Tanya. In interest of time, I want to make sure we get to our case presentation. And our case presenter today is Lydia Ford. And I'm going to just turn it over to you, Lydia.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you guys see the case presentation? Okay, so my name is Lydia Ford. I am the Assistant Administrator over at James L. West Center for Dementia Care. And today I will be presenting the case. So our situation is the spouse of a resident wanted her husband moved to a different level of care. So for us, that's a different house, and believed that he didn't receive the appropriate attention within his unit. And that was why she wanted him moved. The background of this, the spouse was dissatisfied by the activities programming that occurred on the house where her husband was housed, and believed that he wasn't receiving sufficient attention or appropriate activities, causing him to display behaviors that she had not experienced with him personally while he was still residing at home. Our assessment was the resident was determined to be in the unit with the most appropriate level of care for his specific dementia needs by the administration and the clinical staff. The spouse was able to communicate her concerns directly with the administrator and the director of life enrichment. The director of life enrichment agreed to weekly updates regarding the highlights of the resident's week to be sent home to the spouse, along with the assurance that life enrichment occurs throughout the day, not just when it's formally scheduled. The spouse was also educated on situations that could cause behaviors to arise in individuals with dementia. So as far as recommendations go, how would you address the spouse's concern with a lack of engagement with activities from the resident? How would you manage the desire of the spouse to have her husband move to a less appropriate unit? And how would you communicate this information to the spouse, knowing that the outcome wasn't exactly what she wanted?
Thank you, Lydia. I've heard this kind of case presentation or question a couple of times, in the past. Even personally, had some family concerns about what were the activities happening? Care was okay, but the activities were not there. So I want to ask, are there any clarifying questions from the group?
Lydia, I have a question. Just, was her husband by chance, the unit where she was wanting him to move, was it a higher functioning unit? Was he in a unit and then she was wanting him to move? So had he recently moved to a new unit and she felt like the activities weren't adequate and basically was wanting him to be moved back to his previous unit?
From my understanding, it wasn't a recent move, but she was wanting him on a house where we typically have more ambulatory residents. So it was a physical discrepancy.
Okay. And could we ask what some of the behaviors were that were being noticed or that he was displaying?
So the behaviors that were being noticed were, I guess, more just disruptive behaviors. He wasn't, from what I understand, he didn't have any physical altercations with other residents, but he was getting to the point where there was the worry that it could happen.
Okay. And he had not displayed any behaviors like that in previous in any other unit in the building or any other house. This was new.
In his
Can I-
home. Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
Okay, the resident, that is the only house he's ever been on. And he has had other altercation with residents, a lot of resident to residents, and he's always the aggressor. And then he does stuff like pulling the paintings off the wall, trying to pull the fire alarm off the wall. So, yeah.
Mm. That's hard. Is he a big person?
Yes, very big.
So
Mm.
one of,
Oh,
I'm gonna,
interesting.
can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So I was just gonna jump in, and a lot of times, residents are in best behavior when their families are here. It's usually a small window of time, and they're one-on-one related. So when a spouse comes to visit the husband and they have books and they have pictures and they sit, he interacts because A, he recognizes the familiarity of that person. B, they're providing him a one-on-one activity at the time, and he's comfortable with them. So in the family's mind, this is how he interacts with everybody. This is how he interacted at home when the kids would come visit. This is how he interacted outside in the yard with the neighbors. They were all routine actions that he was able to handle. And a lot of the time with families, it's about education. It's about understanding that, yes, we offer these activities, but we cannot force a resident to participate or to stay with it. And they come and they go during the activities. And when the wife would come visit and say, well, what did you do this morning? He would say, nothing. I want to come home. Even if he was axe throwing, even if they had a really great activity here, booze and tattoos. But when the wife comes, it was horrible morning. I was bored. I didn't do anything, because that's trying to manipulate the wife to take them home. But this isn't working. So many times we have to encourage education of the family. We do investigate how much somebody is involved in activities and what activities would work best for them. The interesting thing is, and Holly hinted to it a little bit ago, I was surprised when I started working here because we only have one calendar. There's not different calendars for each house, but each activity on the calendar is presented in a different way for that environment. So a lot of times it's getting the family to understand that, getting them to see that best behavior still happens, even in stage 7, even in stage 1. It still happens. The routines are there. They might not know their wife's name or might remember them as a girlfriend, but that's one-on-one. So what we try to do is encourage them to find friends and to participate in that way and redirect into those activities. And sometimes even just sitting watching the activities gives that stimulation. And so I'm not sure which family we're talking about because this happens often. It's a lot about education, a lot about teaching families what goes on when they're really not here, in the good ways and in the bad ways. So that's one of the keys, I think, to addressing an issue like this.
Does his wife ever attend activities?
Well,
with
with
him?
COVID, we haven't been able to have families with activities. If we have a group of residents, our family members have to stay
Okay.
6 feet away. And if you're in an activity and your person you know is over there, you're not going to want to participate in the activity. So, and Linda asked a great question about taking pictures of people in activities. And we do that often, especially when COVID first hit. I swear, Life Enrichment had me sending emails, maybe 20 pictures out a day. And it was time consuming, but it was what we could do at the time to show families. So yeah, we do pictures when we can, but a lot of times if it's 4 guys sitting at a table, it's very hard to get a picture of one with nobody in the background. and take a picture of another with nobody in the background. But we do work with families as best we can in making sure that they understand the involvement. And, you know, nobody wants to know that their husband was the instigator. And then the nice thing is later on is if the resident is not the instigator, they understand that family, what they're going through, because now somebody else is the instigator. So it's a lot of education.
And so Holly put in the chat, one way to think of activities is independent activities, supportive activities, meaning coming alongside the resident, and sensory activities for the different stages of the disease. And I would even say that with our family going from an independent or assisted living to a memory care, and how a lot of education is needed then as well. And what to expect, kind of going back to what we talked about last week about just managing and communicating with families and managing those expectations, and how the activities are still the same, but it's different. And it is subject to change throughout the day, depending on what's going on. Any other questions or recommendations from the group?
I just ask a question because I don't know anything about skilled nursing facilities, but how do you have to document activities for each individual resident? I mean, how do you keep track of residents that are receiving a one-on-one activity or in a small group, or what kind of documentation do you have in place? Because I know surveyors are going to want to know what's going on.
We do PCC documentation, just like the nursing staff. So
PCC is like a patient care attendant or something? Okay, thank you.
So
assisted
Linda,
living communities, there's, go ahead.
That's what I was going to ask. What do y'all do in assisted living?
Yeah, it really varies. And in the classes that I teach, I have to talk to them about how would you show a surveyor that you're actually meeting the regulations, because there are regulations for licensed memory care assisted living communities. You know, you have to have so many cognitive, so many physical, so many recreational, those kinds of things. You have to have so many per day, per week, weekdays, weekends, all that sort of thing. And residents who cannot or choose not to participate in group activities must be offered one-on-one, just like, you know, you were talking about. But I don't think that communities do a very good job of documenting that they do that. And I think that's critical, because then you also have something to show the families that, you know, mom did participate. This is what we did today with your mom. And this is a way, now, of course, the era of COVID is different, but this is an area where we try to encourage people to use lots of volunteers because the staff in assisted living is typically more limited. If the community is small, licensed for 16 or fewer, you have less requirements than you do if the community is considered large by the state, that is the 17 or more. And you can see what a difference it makes between 17 residents and 50 or 60 or 70, and you're still considered large, and yet you only have 17 residents. And so you have much fewer staff to try to do that. But I do think documentation is really important and can help families a little bit, along with the education piece that you're talking about.
Linda, when I worked in an assisted living and I had more the role of kind of what Teresa does here, I always started my care conferences with Life Enrichment, and we took a lot of pictures. And so we started the care because we want to start good, and then we'll discuss the challenging, and we'll end on a good note. Sandwich. So I would always have the Life Enrichment come in with all the pictures of, and here's mom this, and there she is that, and here she is this, especially if they were getting lots of, I'm not doing anything, I'm bored, nothing, I'm sleeping all day, that we don't do anything around, you know, that kind of stuff. To be able to show them, well, here she is making ice cream, you know, whatever it might be. But we did something that I called, and this is just my teacher background, I called it the report card. And not only did we have like current MMSCs and that type thing, Beck depression scales, those type, but we also had their activity report card so that we could track and show them, you know, and then so many times that would help because then the families were able to go, it's time for them to change. We called them neighborhoods. It's time to change neighborhoods. They're not participating in as many independent, they're needing more supportive. I bet it's time for, and then we weren't the one having to give them the news that it's time to move. They knew because of the education. And then we were showing them every time in their report card.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, Holly. Thank you.
So I have, you know, kind of what I've pulled out of this. One of the most important things is education, educating the families on, you know, teaching them, but showing them, whether it's, you know, it's using pictures about what really goes on throughout the day and where, what the abilities are of the resident and how the activities are presented or how they're, whether it's independent or supportive or sensory and why that matters to meet the resident where they're at. And then documenting the activities is crucial, not only because it's a regulatory thing, but for the family, using that as education for the families and as a report card. You're already having to do it, so it's there. So let's use it for other purposes that can be beneficial for the families, but also for the staff. It's beneficial as well. So, Lydia, does that adequately address your questions or recommendation questions?
I believe it does.
Thank you. And thank you for being a case presenter. So I'm going to ask those of you that are on the call, if you have not presented a case, we really would love to have people volunteer for case presentations. I will send a template. It's real easy, or you can just fill out anything that you want to fill out. Really, it's pretty casual case presentation for the upcoming weeks. We do have 4 more weeks. No, we have 5 more weeks left, excuse me. Next week will be our kind of midway point. And we will, so next week will be June 15th. We'll meet on Tuesday at noon. Our program topic is going to be person-centered ADL care and dementia. So kind of taking a little bit what we started to talk about today in with the person-centered care and moving that or diving deeper into that and how to help train the staff also with that person-centered care. But would really, really encourage if y'all want to present a case. We would love to have that. We'd love to have volunteers. So unless there are any other questions or anybody has anything to say.
So Jamie, I just wanted to make one little point because it was so exciting, and I'm sure that you all have been hearing in the news about the FDA approval of aducanumab, and it's historic. And I just hope everyone, especially those of you who've been working in this field for a very long time, we've never had this, and this is the beginning of, I have no doubt, something really amazing. And I know it's not a cure, but it's a step towards that. And I just had to take a moment to hope we all breathe in just how really historic this moment is. It's amazing.
Yes, and I was going to see maybe next week we could even spend some time talking about what that means, really, because I know that we're going to be getting a lot of questions about it from families that say, "Oh, great, we have a cure," or "When can I get on that medication?" I know there's certain things, certain criteria for the medication, but next week maybe spend a little bit of time just discussing that, so we give the right information when we're asked. Ask those questions.
Jamie, that's a great idea. And Kathy, thanks for bringing it up because we are most definitely, I had a ton of emails already today because of course we were posting it out yesterday as well. My number one thing I'm hearing is cost, that's going to be the, not only how do we get our hands on it, but is insurance going to pay for it? What's the cost going to be? That type thing.
Well, you know, Medicare and insurance covers infusion therapy for cancer and MS. And so we really don't have any, we think it's reasonable to expect the same in this case because it is an infusion therapy. So, but the Alzheimer's Association is certainly already jumping on advocacy, working, reaching out to CMS and insurance payers to make sure that they, we do what we can to push for that. But because there's precedent with cancer and MS, we really expect that this will follow suit.
Very good. The beginning of the end. That's what the beginning of the end.
I've been hoping to work my way out of a job for 25 years one day.
I know it. It's great. I said, we'd love to change our name too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that they're on June 21st, the Alzheimer's Association is doing a special program about this medication as well. And we'll, if you haven't already gotten that, I'll include that in the follow-up email too. So, all right. Well, I appreciate it. And again, we will see y'all next Tuesday at noon. June 15th.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.